Hey guys, welcome back to my channel where we talk about overcoming toxic relationships. If you are new here, my name is Nailah Abdullah. I'm a mental health therapist turned life and relationship coach, and today we're going to talk about how long does it take to get over narcissistic abuse. So when we talk about getting over something, which I know is a very common term that's used, but let's just kind of get clear on what that means. In my opinion, it means that it no longer consumes you. So when we go through difficult times, when we go through traumatic experiences, when we talk about we want to get over it, we can never turn a switch off and forget about it, right? When it's trauma. And it also doesn't mean that if you are healed to a certain extent that, these thoughts may not still come up for you. But the goal is, when we talk about that we want to heal from something, the goal is that it no longer consumes you. It no longer governs the way that you function in life. It no longer consumes you, in your decision making, right? So when we talk about we want to get over narcissistic abuse, it means you want to get to a place where it no longer consumes you and you can proceed and move on with a healthy life, making healthy decisions and starting new healthy relationships. So in order for us to get to that point where it no longer consumes us, it no longer governs the way that we make decisions and how we treat ourselves and how we approach relationships, right? That means we have to put in the work to our healing. And what does that look like? That means asking ourselves a question: how did I get here? Let me say this, and if you know me, you know I say this many times. It is not a coincidence that you ended up in a toxic or narcissistic relationship. There is a reason for that. And that is not a statement to make you blame yourself, but it does mean that there's something within us, and I say us because I'm also a survivor of toxic and narcissistic relationships. It's something in us that made us tolerate that type of behavior, that made us naive to the way that these people behave and the way that they treat us. And again, the fact that we tolerated it. So some of the main questions that I go over with my clients when we're working on their healing journey is, how did I get here? How did this relationship come about? When these red flags came up, how was I able to not see them? Right? Even when I did start to recognize things, what were the thoughts that were going on in my mind that said, let me try anyway, let me stick around anyway? Why did I stay in it so long, right? Because most toxic and narcissistic relationships, whether it be clients that I've worked with, friends and family that I know, as well as in my own relationships, it was always long-term relationships. So why did I stay so long? These are some of the questions that you have to start asking yourself. And it's not something that you're going to come up with right away, but it is something that you have to process and figure out for yourself or get support with to figure out, how did I get here? Because once you're able to answer that for yourself, you're then able to say, okay, now how do I shift the way I think about people, about relationships, about boundaries? But that takes work. One of the biggest mistakes I see women make is that they believe that if I watch a ton of videos about narcissism, about toxic people, if I maybe change a job, if I go out with my girlfriends, start a new career, start a new degree, all these different things, eventually it'll go away, right? And sad to say, that is not the case. Now, those are fine things to do, and they can distract you and it can improve your life. But if you do not get to the root cause of what led you in that place, in that relationship, what kept you in that relationship, if you do not get to the root cause of that, you're going to repeat it again. Okay? And the other side to that, some people say, well, I just won't get in any more relationships. I won't take relationships seriously anymore. As human beings, we are meant for companionship. So more than likely, you're going to, at the very least, date. And when you do not heal, when you do not get clarity on the old version of you that got you there and kept you in that toxic relationship, you're going to still attract the wrong type of people, right? So one of the things I encourage you to do is to make sure that you do not allow distractions to make you feel like I'm healing, right? Or because I have a guard up and I'm not going to allow myself to be vulnerable anymore in relationships, that I'm healing, I'm protected. They're just distractions. It's like putting a Band-Aid on a wound, right? If you don't treat it, if you maybe don't stitch it up, if you don't do an X-ray or MRI or whatever it is, you're just bandaging it and putting it to the side. You're not really getting to the root cause of the problem. And that is the same thing with these different distractions or putting a guard up. You're still going to attract the wrong type of people. You're not going to recognize certain red flags. And if you do, you don't know how to handle it. And if you do block it off, you feel, maybe anxious inside that maybe I'm making the wrong decision or maybe I'm going to be alone forever, right? There's a lot of the thoughts that goes on that puts us in those situations So you really have to get to the root cause, again, of what got you there and what kept you there. Now, if you clicked on this video because you're looking for an exact time frame, there is no exact time frame. So I'm sorry to disappoint you. But what I will say is the sooner you get to studying yourself, the sooner you will get to healing. And I know some people say, don't rush your healing, don't rush your healing. But let me tell you this, life is short, and no, you don't want to rush it so you can hop back into another serious relationship or rush it just to say, hey, give me an award, I'm healed, I'm fine. No, but you also don't want to waste your time, just not doing the work and being stuck, because life is to be enjoyed. Life is about relationships. We're not meant to be in solidarity, right? We're meant to have relationships. So, and it's not to say you always have to have a partner. Sometimes it is good to have, take a break from relationships and just to focus on yourself. But again, you also don't want to waste time, just being on YouTube, ruminating about narcissists and how awful they are. But yet still, you're still internally stuck. You're still emotionally and psychologically stuck, right? That's also not healthy. And that's something that I see a lot. One of the biggest myths that I hate to hear, so I'm going to say it here, is that time heals all wounds. No, they do not. I have spoken to women in their 60s that have dealt with toxic or narcissistic relationships, romantic relationships, family relationships, and they are still struggling. And it's not because, something's wrong with them and they can't work through it. It's probably because they have not taken the time to really work on themselves. And sometimes you can do it on your own. Sometimes you need support with it. But here's the thing. Again, I believe life is short. I'm all about progress. If something is not working for you, if you see that something keeps happening, keep going wrong for you, it's your responsibility as an adult to get help and work on it, right? Unless you want to stay stuck there. And that's in any area of our lives. The same way we would go to a medical doctor, if we're having health issues, and some of us can be stubborn with that too, right? Financial issues, whatever it is. Why stay stuck in it when you can work on it and 6 months from now or a year from now, you're in a completely different place? Because I believe, God has a purpose for all of us. And the longer that we stay stuck and playing games with this one and caught up in this issue, we're just wasting time from getting to the purpose that we have. So if you are about numbers and you want to hear how long is it going to take me? At least a roundabout. I'll share my personal experience. It took me about a month after I ended the relationship with my toxic narcissistic ex to figure him out. What do I mean by that? That's where I did study about personality disorders. Now, as a mental health professional, I have a degree in mental health and clinical social work. I did study narcissism, but when you study it in school, it's different than when you experience it in person, because in school, they're just giving you a brief overview. When you live it and you experience it, you're like, wow, this is a whole nother level. So it took me about a month studying it and comparing the experiences that I had with that person. It also opened up my eyes to narcissists in my family, which was hard, sad, but also a blessing. Because when you are able to get clear about relationships, it opens your world in all your relationships, right? So your healing journey, more than likely, is also, if you go through it, if you put all in, it's also going to open up your world in all aspects of your life, not just about this relationship. You're going to blossom. You're going to evolve into, I know it sounds cliche, but into a better version of yourself, because you get more clear about people's behavior. You get more clear about yourself and how to handle certain situations. But all in all, it took me about a month to understand his behavior, to understand a little bit about where it came from, because that was a 10-year relationship. So I had access to the family and the history. And I'm not saying that we need to study them and their history fully, because that's too much work and we wasted enough time on them. But it does help to open our eyes to understand human behavior, right? So it took me about a month to understand that this person had narcissistic traits. And this person, there was no hope for this person. There was no hope for the relationship. And I had to lay that hope to rest. I had to accept that this was a major blunder I made in my life. I had to give myself grace for that mistake that I made. I had to cry all the tears that I felt like I wasted my time. And as I went through my healing journey, I realized that God has, God turns, as they say, I forgot the terminology, but he turns our bad experiences and makes a purpose out of it, right? So I had to accept that yes, it was 10 years of my life. It's not like I didn't do other things in those 10 years. I still did other things with my life then. But it was up to me to turn those wounds into wisdom, right? So it took me about a month to figure out who that person was. And the remaining, I would say 11 months, so it was a total of a year. The remaining 11 months, I worked on myself. I had to figure out, what is it about me? Because I always said, well, I'm a pretty smart woman, right? I made good decisions, and a lot of women that I work with are very, successful women. They're doing things in their lives. They have good friendships. They're go-getters. So they're making really good decisions in their lives. But when it comes to their relationships, they find themselves with these toxic or narcissistic people, right? So I had to figure out, this is not adding up. I'm doing well in all these other areas, but I made this mistake. I tolerated this. How is that possible? So I had to work on figuring myself out. And that took about 11 months. I would say it took about a total of 12 months for me to get to a place where I was ready for a serious relationship. Now, I will give full disclaimer. I did date one person in between those 12 months. I was clear that this was not a permanent situation. I think because I had been so emotionally neglected for so long, this person came along and gave me, was very kind, right? And gave me emotional attention that I hadn't had in, 10 years. Well, let's say 9, right? Because the first year of these toxic relationships, or the first 6 months, are usually pretty nice, right? That's where they're love bombing you. But I will say I don't recommend dating when you're trying to heal for a lot of people. I think I was pretty mature about the fact that, and there were times where I started to catch feelings, and then I would have to reel myself back and say, no, Nailah, this is not really a long-term relationship. This is just something that is feeding a need that you have been neglected from for so long, right? But it wasn't until a full year I ended that temporary relationship, and it wasn't until a full year that I was really ready to start a real relationship. And even when I started that real relationship, which is now my husband, I had to still go through another healing period where I had to learn how to be in a relationship again, right? So my point is, it's more about learning about you than about them. So if you find yourself on YouTube, on, wherever it is, it's okay to educate yourself on narcissism. It's okay to educate yourself on toxic and destructive personality disorders. It is okay. I know a lot of you may not want to hear this, but most of the work is on you. If you really want to heal, if you really want to change the way that your life goes and relationships goes, most of the work is on you. So besides doing the work on yourself, one of the things I also want you to be aware of is to be patient with yourself. I know I always say, life is short. We don't have time to waste, but you still need to be patient with yourself, because there will be ups and downs. Okay, so be patient with yourself. Give yourself grace. Looking at ourselves doesn't mean that we're blaming ourselves. It just means that we're taking accountability, and we're making sure that we are changing the parts of us, not all of us, but the parts of us that needs to change, so we don't end up in another situation like that again. Because that is also very common. You go from one to the next, and they may look different on the outside, but they're the same on the inside. And again, that is not a coincidence. There's a reason that you are ending up in these types of relationships. So in addition to doing the work, you want to be patient with yourself. You want to give yourself grace. Seek God also for guidance, okay? For those of you who know God, you know about prayer, you know about meditation, you know that you need to take time to read the word, you know that you need to take time to pray, and you know that you need to take time to sit in meditation, which is in silence, and just listen to his guidance. Ask him to guide you, because he is our source. He will guide you, right? He will guide us. And let me tell you something. If I would have listened to him before, I would not have ended up in that situation, because the way that I hear God now, he would have prevented that. But you know, you're young and you're stubborn and you think you know everything and you think you're in control of everything. So you live and you learn. I hope that this video was helpful for you. If you are looking for any support to heal, to move on past a toxic and narcissistic relationship, you can click the links in the description box below for more information. And I will see you in the next episode.